reject and don't even think about Islam, he is a child insulter, whatever, right?
That's what she was saying, but how do you explain
Yeah.
like a 30-year-old marrying like a
Yeah.
9-year-old?
So when at that time, and even true for all the time, Islam did not settle on an age of marriage. Islam gave a universal guidance so that a person who is living in a village in poverty or someone living in a palace, they can still apply the law everywhere. It's a universal law in which once you reach the age of puberty and you have maturity and there's no harm in this marriage, physical relationship, you can get married. In the olden times, that was people when you're younger. Why? Because there was no such thing called adolescence. It's a modern invention in which you go through, I'm a teenager. People lived a life which was very short at that time. They matured early, because what happens, look, the biological system is such that you want to live your legacy through children. Now, if you only live for 20 years, what are you going to do? Are you going to say, when I'm 18, I'm going to get married and so on? You're going to die perhaps even when you're 18. So people matured early and then they procreated early because they could then have marriage and relationship and so on, and they left their progeny. This was a biological necessity during the dictates of time and place at that time. This was common to the East in India, for example. It was of Far East, even in England. Henry VIII and many others married someone who was 8 years old, 9 years old, 11 years old, and so on and so forth. But they consummated. Marriage should be consummated. I don't know exactly the king's marriages, but it was not considered something immoral to have engagement even with someone who is a minor. But Islam says the consummation of marriage has to be when someone becomes an adult. Now, when do you become an adult? You become an adult when you reach the age of puberty. In today's society, you're adult in England when you're 18, in America, certain states when you're 14, in other countries when you're 16, in another country when you're 15, arbitrary age. These ages are arbitrary. When you are an adult biologically and you're mature intellectually and so on, and there's no harm, this is where you can have children.
It just makes sense the way that you're...
This is how it used to be a status quo everywhere.
But I think 9 years old is still very...
No,
how can you mature that much in 9 years?
Today, people may not mature at 9 years in this country, for example. Then you can't have a marital relationship at that age. You have to have someone who reaches the age of puberty, could be 14, 15,
Even
13.
1,000 years ago, 9 years old is still very young.
No. At that time, people matured early. Do you know, according to the Christian tradition, how old was Mary when she had a child? She was to the maximum of about 14. Already had child. And how old was Joseph? 90, and 14. This particular individual, this lady, is accusing a 54-year-old, did you say 54 or 53? 50-year-old with a 9-year-old, when in her belief system is a 90-year-old with a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Look at the double standard hypocrisy. No. But anyway, in the olden times, do you have to go? Is that why you're looking at your times?
Yeah, just because I've got dinner later. And
That's fine, that's fine.
Well, it's been lovely speaking.
No, when you have to go, you can go, of course.
Yeah.
But what I would highly recommend is read the Quran. Read the biography. Look, when you talk about the Quran, it comes to you. This is a gift to you in English language, right?
Okay, cool.
Read about it.
Yeah.
It's easier to read from the very end, small chapters, talking about concept of God, concept of the hereafter, day of judgment, accountability. So it will give you understanding of what exactly you're supposed to believe in. In the beginning, you'll have lots of laws and rituals and regulations. The Quran is compiled in a way that is different to any other book. Okay, same book from God. It wasn't revealed like this in this order. It was revealed, sent down in a different order, but with God's instruction, it was collected together. So the coherence of the Quran itself is something to ponder on. How is something that was revealed, given in a different order, but come together now, the coherence from one chapter to the other, and you can see the flow of coherence, one united whole, by in this order. It's mind-boggling. How can a prophet place something here and there in a position like this with this coherency? In a linguistic theory, that is something like, unfathomable. The Quran actually challenges people using a linguistic theory model. Okay? It says if you are doubtful as to this book, if it wasn't sent down to the servant Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, servant of God, all you have to do is bring something like it. A one portion, it's called a surah, like roughly translated as a chapter. A surah is one thematic unity. Some surah is 3 lines, other surahs are 280 lines, something or even longer, right? So you have varying degrees of the length of a chapter or a surah. The Quran says if you are in doubt about this, you should be able to bring something like it. Bring a book like it, or 10 of these surahs like it, or 1 surah like it. This was a challenge 1400 years ago. This is roughly when the Prophet was there. Why are people unable to match it? Why are people unable to do it even today to bring something like it? I have a whole video about ChatGPT, whether even ChatGPT can imitate it. It can imitate Shakespeare, it can imitate the Bible, but when it comes to the Quran, you can go ChatGPT, my name is Mansur, and just use this word, Quran, ChatGPT, Mansur, and find more than 1 hour video where I try to help ChatGPT in every way, shape possible to imitate it, giving it clues and conditions. At the end it says, it cannot. Not with this linguistic model of ChatGPT, let alone any human beings. So what is stopping people from imitating it? Because it's a divine hallmark. Remember what I said? It needs every prophet and messenger, for people to believe in their message, they're given something so that people can believe in. The Quran comes with its own evidence, with its own proof, so that people who are of a sound heart and mind can see the evidence, assess the evidence and say, that's it. I can be certain it's from God. Or they can say, I can be certain it's not from God. The Quran offers those falsification tests. It says, if it wasn't from God, you will find within it many contradictions, many errors, many discrepancies. Yeah, it makes sense. If it wasn't from God, that's what we would expect. So Quran opens up to people, go and find a contradiction in the Quran. Do you think people would have stopped and not attempted it? There are amples of examples in the internet. Oh, there is this contradiction. But go and look at the response and the counter response, and you'll find you can untick from the list. Nope, that doesn't look like a contradiction. That doesn't look like a contradiction. That doesn't look like a... Eventually you come to a point where you can't find a true contradiction. How is it possible? How is it possible? A book that talks about science, history, prophecies, astronomy, botany, biology, anthropology, and not get any error or mistakes. That is the divine falsification test for people like yourself, open-minded, rational, critical thinking, to say, I can be sure and certain that is from God or not.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, not really. Not really, no. But it's been lovely speaking with you. Thank you for taking your time to speak.
You too. What's your name?
Savina.
Serena.
With a V.
With the V's. Serena. It's a pleasure meeting to you. I appreciate your time, and I can only hope that you continue from where you've left off now to read the Quran and read the biography of the Prophet, and ask yourself, when I die, am I going to be in front of God justifying my belief or non-belief about him when he's already given me his guidance through his Prophet and Messenger? Have I accepted it or rejected it? If I have accepted it, then of course I have a guarantee from my God that I'm going to go to a place of eternal tranquility, joy and bliss. Or if I've rejected by arrogance or stubbornness, then where am I going to end up? Because arrogance and stubbornness are the two main things where it will lead people to eternal suffering, and there will be no coming back. There will be people who say, oh God, send us back. I'll be good. I'll do all the things that you said. But God says, there is no coming back. That's why all of this information now is what we need to take into account. God gives us information about the future. Even people, when they're in hellfire, what they're going to say, He's mentioned some of them, so that we can avoid to be in their position.
Yeah.
Okay? You take care. All the best. You take care. Thank you. Thank you. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. I don't know which switch. Sorry.